Attention, everyone. I need to disclose some recent information about my wife, Sherry. It appears she has been involved with a younger man, and I have the proof right here for you to see. These images were captured at a family gathering, and what happened next took everyone by surprise. During our yearly family reunion, my husband, Neil, suddenly stood up and announced to the entire group that I was cheating. He shared the photos with 15 family members, including in-laws. As everyone examined the images, confusion spread like wildfire. Some began to press Neil for clarification. "What's going on, Neil?" they asked. Yes, the images depicted Sherry with a well-dressed young man, but the context wasn't immediately clear. Neil continued to assert that the suit was a high-end brand, implying that Sherry had been secretly meeting this dapper individual. To escalate the drama, he revealed another photo showing a different man altogether. My in-laws, standing side by side, looked visibly shaken. My mother-in-law, in disbelief, confronted Sherry, demanding to know the truth. Sherry confessed to meeting these two men without informing Neil and expressed regret for her lack of honesty. Neil, while appearing let down, basked in what he perceived as a victory. He highlighted Sherry's admission, exclaiming, "Did you all hear that? She just admitted she couldn't tell me. Naturally, she can't, it's because she's a married woman seducing two young men." A heavy silence filled the room as Neil announced his intention to separate from Sherry. The atmosphere turned frigid, and tension thickened the air. In the midst of this seriousness, I found myself bursting into laughter. "What are you saying?" I exclaimed, unable to hold back my shock. A wave of sadness washed over me as I realized how naive I had been. My outburst didn't just surprise my husband, it resonated with everyone present. It wasn't unexpected that those who had suspected me of infidelity found the whole thing amusing. Their laughter sliced through the tense atmosphere, fueled by disbelief and resentment. My father-in-law, however, broke the tension with a stern voice. "Sherry, how can you find humor in a moment like this? Your attitude is inexcusable." I felt the need to apologize, but couldn't deny the absurdity of the situation. "I'm sorry, but it truly was funny. I couldn't help it. I was just talking with those two men," I said, rising to my feet. With my husband beside me, I took a deep breath and shared the real reason for my secrecy. I didn't inform Neil because I was looking into his affair with them. My revelation left the room in shocked silence once again, the atmosphere heavy with unease. I admitted to meeting those men but firmly denied any wrongdoing on my part. It was time to confront the situation directly and end my relationship with Neil. However, as soon as I voiced my decision, my husband lunged at me, incredulous at my explanation. "You were investigating my affair? What kind of excuse is that? Nobody here will believe that. Just confess your cheating and apologize to all of us." His accusations felt like a slap to the face, his skepticism evident, but I stood my ground. "This isn't a ridiculous excuse. Who's fooling whom here? Claiming I'm unfaithful, everyone can see through that," I shot back, my determination unwavering. My in-laws, bewildered by my newfound confidence, urged for clarity. "Sherry, what do you mean about Neil's affair? I can't wrap my head around any of this, please clarify," they pleaded, seeking understanding amid the chaos. Taking a moment to collect my thoughts, I replied, "I'm just like him," I stated, turning to face my stepfather and stepmother. "I intended to discuss this with you both later when we had more time. I apologize for the sudden turn of events. Let me explain the situation step by step. The man in the suit is a lawyer." I sought his guidance regarding my husband's infidelity. As soon as I mentioned lawyer, my in-laws looked even more bewildered. To clarify the matter, I picked up one of the photos my husband had handed out and pointed out the lawyer's badge on the man's suit, even though it was barely discernible in the image. About 6 months ago, Neil underwent a significant change. He had never really cared much about his looks, but suddenly, he started splurging on high-end items without mentioning it to me. He had previously claimed that the suit in question was from an extremely luxurious brand, suggesting that this new focus on personal grooming was a habit he had recently adopted. As I shared this, my in-laws and relatives listened quietly, but Neil's face flushed with immediate indignation. He challenged my accusations. questioning what was wrong with being well-dressed. He seemed to think I was insinuating he was unfaithful simply because of his appearance. Dismissing my concerns as an implausible excuse, I clarified that it wasn't just his attire that raised my suspicions. I had confronted the woman he was rumored to be seeing. Surprisingly, it was her husband who first approached me, initiating the discussion. I turned to my in-laws and highlighted the photo that Neil had shown my father-in-law, pointing out that the man in the suit was the husband of Neil's alleged mistress. Neil, still incredulous, shouted, "Are you serious? This can't be a coincidence. I find that hard to believe." I was just as shocked when Jimmy, a close friend of mine and the husband of the woman Neil was involved with, sought my counsel. It was an eye-opening moment. For the last 6 months, Jimmy had suspected his wife of being unfaithful and had confided in me. Together, we decided to hire a private investigator to look into it. To our astonishment, Neil's name came up during the inquiry, alongside evidence of Jimmy's wife's affair. She had already admitted to cheating on him. What astonished me even more was that Neil had deceitfully claimed to be single, leaving Jimmy's wife stunned to discover my existence. Nevertheless, the affair itself was inexcusable. Reflecting on the situation, I pulled out an envelope from my bag that contained crucial evidence. I handed it out to my in-laws and relatives. Unveiling the truth, Neil had accused me of cheating while he was the one engaged in an affair. My earlier laughter wasn't due to amusement, but rather disbelief at Neil's audacity and foolishness. He thought I was unaware of his treachery, but his actions told a different story. As I spoke, a blend of anger and disappointment filled the room. My in-laws and relatives began to understand the severity of the situation. Neil's actions were not just deceitful, they were shameful. The evidence of his affair had been carefully compiled, and his cheating partner had confessed. Now it was Neil who owed our relatives an apology. The dynamics had shifted dramatically. However, Neil's response took an unexpected twist. "I have to admit I was the one involved in an affair," he stated, but then he deflected the blame onto me, claiming it was my fault. He argued that because we had no children due to my infertility, I was essentially useless, unable to meet the societal expectations of motherhood and managing household duties. This rationalization darkened the expressions of my in-laws and other relatives. It's true that we had been married for about 3 years without conceiving, which led me to pursue fertility treatments. I had invited my husband to support me in this process, but he was uncooperative, placing the blame solely on me. He wanted children but was unwilling to undergo the necessary procedures, only providing his sample and leaving the rest for me to handle. My father-in-law couldn't hide his irritation at Neil's selfishness and raised his voice, challenging the idea of discarding me like a tool when I was deemed unnecessary. He pointed out how my support had allowed our marriage to function smoothly. He stressed that managing household tasks and the ability to bear children should never be taken for granted. Tension escalated among the in-laws, and I felt increasingly anxious. Some relatives, including other housewives like me, were deeply offended by Neil's claim that it was common sense for women to manage domestic responsibilities and have children. His comments were not just a personal insult, they were a wider affront to housewives and individuals struggling with infertility around the world. It became clear that my husband had a very limited viewpoint. He focused only on what was immediately in front of him, showing no awareness of the challenges that others face. In this charged atmosphere, my father-in-law voiced his frustration, emphasizing that my husband's way of thinking was both misguided and superficial. In a shocking turn of events, my husband, with a dismissive attitude, expressed gratitude toward me, implying I was a mere tool and suggesting I was even less valuable because of my infertility. "I've thought about it, and I appreciate you, Sherry. You're right, Dad. I want to be happy, and having a child is crucial for that. Do you understand?" My father-in-law, nearly bursting with emotion, leaned in closer to my husband, while my mother-in-law intervened to defuse the situation. "Neil, I understand your desire for a child, but cheating on Sherry and deceiving us was not the way to handle things. Why did you accuse her of infidelity? Is it just to escape alimony? Claiming she cheated makes it easier for you to get a divorce and avoid alimony. That's why I did it. Even if things go south, I can always pay to settle the matter," my husband shot back. My mother-in-law was visibly upset and attempted to confront him physically, but my father-in-law held her back, urging her to remain calm. He reasoned, "Resorting to violence won't help, he doesn't even deserve it. But he's our son, we can't just stand by and let this happen," she replied. "You need to compose yourself, Mom, you're older now," my husband interrupted, with an air of arrogance. "Sherry and I will be divorcing soon, and I'm moving out. I'll pay you alimony, so don't complain, and don't come back to me crying about how much you miss me. Do whatever you want, I retorted, just remember, you're the one who better not come crying back to me after the divorce. I'm not going to shed any tears for you, you fool. Well, this will be our last encounter, so I'll settle for a goodbye. Sherry, what do you have to say? The relatives were already furious with him, who continued to curse to the end. Amidst this chaos, I smiled and calmly replied, you said you'd discard me because I can't have children, which is amusing because I'm not infertile. You are. What did you just say? I'm not infertile, and now you're trying to throw me away. Honestly, I don't care anymore. You've deceived not only me, but your parents, and everyone in this room. You've crossed a line, and I don't even want to share the same air as you anymore. Hey, Sherry, answer me, what did you mean by saying I'm infertile? For the first time, my husband, who had been indifferent until now, showed signs of agitation. I'm not lying, you're the one who's infertile, not me. When I asked for fertility treatment, you shifted the blame onto me and didn't cooperate. You simply provided the specimen and left everything else to me, which is when I discovered your infertility. Shut up, you're just making this up to throw me under the bus. I don't believe you. I don't need your belief anymore. The truth about you is all that matters, I asserted. My husband pressed me for answers. My in-laws and other relatives were likely blindsided by the news of his infertility, but at this point, it no longer held any weight. The relatives had reached a consensus, my husband and I should separate. It might not matter to you, but it's significant to me. Sherry, why didn't you tell me? I wanted kids, didn't you realize that? He questioned. I clarified that I had attempted to tell him, but he wouldn't listen. Instead, I confided in my friend Jimmy, only to discover that Jimmy's wife was cheating on him with my husband. You're never going to be able to have children, maybe with treatments, maybe not, but for someone like you who doesn't value family, I doubt you'll continue those treatments. They're difficult, and without family support, it's unlikely you'll follow through, so why not just give up? He glanced at his parents and relatives for support, but after all the hurtful things he had said and done, no one spoke up for him. Ultimately, I divorced my husband, and Jimmy divorced his wife. We both filed for alimony, with Jimmy's ex blaming Neil for their split, which caused him ongoing headaches. Despite his continued pursuit of fatherhood through fertility treatments, he found it hard to secure a new partner due to the fallout from his actions. A few years later, I welcomed a healthy baby girl into the world. After my divorce, I remarried, something I never thought I'd do. My new husband, also a divorcee, expressed his desire to start anew with me. We support each other, and my daughter is growing up in a joyful environment. Yet, I never take it for granted, I still believe. Thank you for watching. See you again in the next video, and stay amazed.